All right, guys, thanks for joining us, and welcome to the Primal Group's Filmmakers Corner. My name is Michael Bachochin, and I am here today with
Brooke, Lorraine.
And we have Noam Kroll from the Show Don't Tell podcast as our first guest. Noam, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. This is an honor to be here for the inaugural show, so I appreciate you guys having me.
Today we're going to talk about Parallax, and Noam actually just watched the movie last night, so me and Brooke are going to talk about the process behind making the movie and a little bit about the industry right now with the pandemic and what distribution options are. So stick around.
Good to go.
Oh boy.
All right, so Michael and Brooke, let's talk about Parallax. I just told you offline, but I watched it this morning and loved it. It was... I'll save my thoughts, I guess, for after you guys intro it because I want people to have some context. But first of all, just amazing job. Can you let everyone know who's listening, who doesn't yet know about the film, just a little background, I guess, on the plot and, how it all got started?
Definitely. So Parallax is basically about Naomi. She's this young painter, and she wakes up in a life that she doesn't recognize. And the film basically follows her journey to try and find the truths of her life. Basically, this film kind of came about a couple years back. I was, in like a really, really bad, creative depression space. And I was just like, just not doing anything rewarding. And, I do a lot of like commercial and TV work and stuff. And it was just like it was not paying the creative, artistic, like reward bills, And I had a client that I was doing like a ton of TV work for. And he's like, look, Michael, he's like, I write these movies in like a couple days. Like, it seems ridiculous to me. He's like, you're a great writer too. It seems ridiculous to me that you can't write something. And I'm like, I can't. There's no way. And especially can't do it in just a couple days. Like, that's ridiculous. And he was like, get over yourself. Just write something, and even if it's crap, just deal with it. Like, deal with it then. Don't worry about it now, just deal with it then. And so he was like, you have 72 hours. I'm going to call you in 72 hours, and if the script isn't done, basically there's going to be consequences, like this client I work for, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, Dad, okay, Dad. And he... he calls. Sure enough, he calls me, 3 days later, and he's like, how's the script? And I was like, oh, it's done, And but I couldn't believe that I did that. But basically, all I did was I had no concept in mind besides the only truth that I had been going through at that time, which was this, this very true to me depression. Very disconnected, feeling trapped in the house that I, had my office in. I wasn't leaving much. Depressed, working from home, can't leave, so I'm like, what do I have? I have this character who's depressed, feels trapped in her home, and I kind of just let the story take me from there. And obviously, I kind of knew going into it I wanted, some sci-fi, elements, or at least the illusion of sci-fi elements if they weren't direct sci-fi elements. And
sorry to interrupt, but that's what I loved so much about the film is that, there are a few micro budget independent films that I've seen over the years that have kind of delved into the sci-fi genre, but also worked within their limitations to kind of paint like more of a broad picture and not just go only just straight sci-fi, but also kind of include these other elements. So filmmakers like Shane Carruth, obviously, I don't know if you're a fan of his, but immediately like Upstream Color, it came to mind as a reference, even though the storyline is obviously nothing like yours. And your film, to me, feels a lot more concrete maybe than something like that. But just some of the visuals and some of the techniques that you were employing were really, it reminded me a lot of some of my favorite indie sci-fi films that really seem to get it right. And it's just super unique. I did want to ask you guys at what point did you both decide to kind of collaborate on this? Was that from day one, or when did you get into the picture on this, Brooke?
As soon as the script was done, I kind of jumped in with a few ideas I had, and we went through a few different drafts of Parallax, but we kind of worked on it together and kind of threw back and forth ideas, and I don't know, once the script was done, I was in.
Did you know you were going to have the cameo or the little...
No, I did not, but it's fine.
It was great. I forgot that was coming, and obviously I know you mentioned to me, Michael, at one point that I knew you were in the film, but I'd forgotten, I guess, by the time I started watching it. But it was awesome, and all the acting in general was just so like impressive on this level. That's always for me the number one thing I'm looking for is like how can the actors perform under these circumstances? Because I wasn't on set with you, I don't know exactly what it was like, but I know pretty much every micro budget set is a nightmare in a lot of ways. So if actors can perform under those circumstances, that's always a testament to their abilities, I think.
Yeah, our talent was phenomenal. I mean, obviously, I don't want to leave anyone out because everybody's worth a notable mention. But Naomi and Nelson, who played Naomi and Lucas, they're just next level. And obviously, Hattie, who played Michaela, her connection with Naomi feels so authentically sincere. That's this. We had joked about it on set that it's they almost have, because it's very deceptive without giving too much away. It's the relationship is very deceptive, and so it's they have this high school crush kind of relationship, and kind of displaying that authentically, I feel is just such a, I don't know, it's such a skill,
Was there anything that you did beforehand to kind of make sure that it felt realistic, did they know each other well before, or was there anything that you had to do to just get that kind of familiarity between the actors?
They actually didn't know each other beforehand, but they're both extremely outgoing people, so their chemistry just hit it off right away. So that really worked out for on screen.
Well, all three of them are really Nelson, Hattie, and Naomi. They're all just really kind of boisterous in their own individual ways, and so put the three of them in a room together, and it's who the hell knows what kind of conversation you're gonna walk into, when you walk back in. Yeah, very self-sufficiently entertaining.
Did you have to do a lot of rehearsals or anything before, or was that part of your process typically, or do you just jump right in and kind of find it on set?
So at least as far as how I work, and then what we did on this, so we only did one actual table read. And that was actually when Hattie auditioned, was her table read. She didn't even.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she came to her table read, and I remember being with Brooke afterwards, and she got a text from Hattie, and Hattie was like, "So did I get the role? Do I have this?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, yeah! Let her know. She's got it. I don't think she knew how much we liked her. But really nobody really knew each other, and Nelson was actually the first one cast. So Nelson was at the table read, and Nelson was had to have Naomi and Hattie, both of them were just he's I'm not the producer, I'm not trying to tell you guys what to do, but you cast me with them, we'll make it work, and so we did, and then on set, I'm the kind of director who's if you're acting on my set, I mean, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter if you're being paid a lot or not being paid anything. I expect you to show up and know your lines. And
sure.
if you come to me and start asking me questions as an actor, and you're even slightly questioning the dialogue, because you don't know it, I mean, I'm going to take issue with that. And I think Nelson and Naomi and Hattie and obviously everybody else, everybody just respects the trade so much and respected the script and what we were trying to do with it, that nobody showed up unprepared, It's
so important, I think, for filmmakers that haven't made a feature. I don't know if people realize how important it is, what you just said, just in terms of the preparation, because you have so little time that you're shooting in, and your resources are so thin. So if there's one weak link, it just throws off the entire day or the whole week. So if someone comes and they don't know their lines, or they kind of know their lines, but they don't really get the context of it, then that's not good. So obviously it sounds like the team you put together was just optimal for this, and everyone kind of was on board, because it really just takes one or two people that don't get it, or that don't aren't fully invested in the process, I think, to derail everything. So
right.
Obviously you did a great job of pulling together the right people. And how long is that timeline? So if you can kind of walk us through from you had that first script, you just did the first 72-hour draft or whatever. How long from there until you're actually shooting the movie?
So that was in May or June of 2018. I wrote that, and so I had planned on shooting it that summer, And, you know, like anyone else who works in film, all of a sudden you have to pay bills, and, you know, there's all of a sudden more important priorities in life than your creative reward. Suddenly, you know, just usually comes out of, like, you know, like the peripheral, like it's all of a sudden like, oh my God. You know, and so I had all this work come up, and so then I wasn't able to shoot it. And, you know, and I'd planned on shooting it on a shoestring budget. You know, it was, you know, the script was inevitably, you know, reverse engineered to get to where, you know, where it was when it was produced. And, so, but I'd actually met with Nelson in September of 2018 and pitched him the role of Lucas, and he loved the script, you know, even early drafts of it. And that was before we had Naomi attached or anything. And, but, you know, I didn't really get going on it, I think, until April of 2019. I had just done a movie in Appalachia. It was like a indie studio movie, and it was really, really like, just mentally and physically challenging, and it really made me come back to LA, just kind of like a filmmaker with different aspirations and different ambitions. And you know, I had been a line producer and a co-producer on this film, and I basically was just like, I need to direct. I'm in this business to be a director, a producer. I need to take control of my career. I need to do it. So in April 2019, I was working on another TV movie. I started prepping this one, and I was like, look, the moment I'm off this TV movie, it's prep time, it's go. I don't care what kind of budget I have. I don't care what kind of resources I have. I don't care what kind of team I have. Like, I'm tired of waiting around. I'm tired of waiting for permission from people, you know, to do the things that I want to do in this business. You know, I've done, you know, produced a dozen movies that weren't mine at this point. Like, it's time to do something that I want to do, you know, and get to the places that I want to be. And
for sure,
and I think that's
great though that you
like theme, you know.
For sure, and sorry to cut you off. I was going to say the movies, all those films you'd produced before. I would imagine, like, even though it was frustrating at the time that, like, I'm sure you wanted to be making your own movie, but you must have learned so much, not only what to do, but also what not to do along the way, just seeing the mistakes that other people made. And I'm sure there are films that, like, some of them were really well received and other ones not as much. Some were easier to get made, other ones weren't. So were there any, like, specific things that now when you look back on, you think, okay, you know, because I'd done those, you know, all those other features as a producer, my movie is better as a result because of, you know, this or that. Was it that clear cut, or were you just kind of itching to make a movie? And,
oh no, you know, it's absolutely clear cut, like diamond precision cut. You know, like yeah. I wouldn't be you know, I can confidently say, like, I wouldn't have been able to produce the movie Parallax in what it is, the production value it is, the narrative that it is, had I not done, you know, all these TV movies, all these other, you know, commercials and projects that may or may not have been as rewarding as I felt like they needed to be. And, you know, what these projects that you aren't emotionally invested in do is they allow you to view film as more of like a job. And I feel like that's really important because at the end of the day, there are a lot of people in this business who do just view this as a tax write-off, a financing means, you know, a means to a lifestyle, you know, and you know, for every one of us who's like this impassioned, you know, filmmaker who literally like lives and breathes the trade and the skill, there's equally somebody who just views this like a banking job or, you know, a job working at an oil refinery. Like, it's just numbers on a paper. It's turning profit, turning revenue. And I think that being able to see that as a filmmaker, being able to see that like really exist in this industry and grasp that that's how this industry functions on like a foundational level. I think that that's so crucial to indie filmmakers, especially, you know, with the pandemic going on. Like, and I guess the resounding theme of that is that, and this is what changed my lens on life, you know, and what changed my lens and let me produce Parallax, is that, you know, as crude as it sounds, nobody gives a shit about your movie. And the only person who cares is you. So it's up to you, like, you know, as a director, as a producer, as a creative who's in charge of it, you know, as a producer, like, every person is like 100% in charge of what they're in charge of. And if it's your movie, if it's your concept, then it's your job to flesh it out, not your DPs, not your creative producer you're working with. Those people are all just supplemental to the cause. And, you know, and so I think that had I not done all those movies, had I not done, you know, all this work that I would find not as artistically rewarding, I wouldn't have been able to see my own film through the lens of the audience truly as a consumer, and been able to craft a film that I was able to get the experience I wanted my audience to have from their perspective without knowing the context of what I was trying to do as a director.
Yeah, that's really well said, because it's not necessarily just about making, a more commercial film. I think when people think about the business aspects of filmmaking, they're always thinking like, well, I don't want to make this big commercial film. But what you're saying is like, you could still make a great sci-fi or art house or whatever independent movie that is creative and different and unique, but also reaches an audience because you're still going through the same kind of, fundamentals and foundation that any movie is going to. And it's like when you can harmonize those two things, like your creative drive with the the sort of tactical like reality of what it's like to make and sell a movie, those are the two things. And I think what you've done so well is in my opinion just explore both of those areas. A lot of filmmakers, as you alluded to, and this was very much me, until recently, like not really thinking about the business aspect. Like I have a business and that's separate. That's how it always was for me. And now you kind of realize that there's creativity in how you market the movie and like, how you make it maybe a little bit more commercial or digestible or whatever. But again, I think from my vantage point, having just seen the film, it feels like something that is really unique, has a lot of artistic integrity, but also could easily be watched by basically anybody who just wants to watch a good movie. So that's not easy to pull off.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and I just want to like expand upon what you're getting at, because again, I feel like if as a filmmaker, if I was just starting, if I wasn't sure where to go, if I needed some encouragement, like I feel like I would want to hear this is understanding that commercial design is not inherently bad. You hear a lot of directors in this business who don't do art house stuff, who really, really will spiel your ear off in this industry about commercial design. Like it's not about being, a great director or this innovative artist. It's about commercial design, and you always hear people reference, Steven Spielberg, Soderbergh, as these examples of commercial design. But I think that it's not inherently wrong. I think it's what you do with it. And I think, putting yourself into the lens of commercial design, like as a filmmaker, allows you to, like you said, you're able to better, that's not a word, but you're able to more better craft, what you're trying to execute and deliver to your audience. Like if I'm trying to convey and create this emotional experience in my audience, like I want, Joe Smith from northern New York or Maine, and I have no idea who this person is, but when they watch the movie, I want them to have this emotional experience during this scene or during this sequence of scenes. It's a really different kind of lens to put yourself in every person's shoes and try and create that spectrum of experiences so that everybody's kind of equally receiving it, and it's not just interpretable for one type of person. And
I just want to add to that because I think for those filmmakers, probably like you or I, who maybe came from a more like artistic place initially as opposed to commercial, I think the one saving grace that you have is you may worry that you're going to make a movie and you're going to, try to fit it into this box and it's going to be too commercial and it's not going to be you. But like chances are, if you're anything like, I know, like just speaking for myself, like your ideas are probably initially so out there that even if you try to box yourself in, like you're still, all those, sensibilities that you have are still going to be in the movie, even if you do draw from a more commercial paradigm and you do make it, you do try to hit some beats that, are going to make it resonate with a wider audience and not ostracize people who aren't cinephiles who aren't looking for something that's super avant-garde or whatever. So I think it's a great point that you make, and hopefully people realize that, like, embracing that side of it, just like embracing the business end of filmmaking. Mm-hmm. We talked about this once, like, again, I think offline after you'd heard a podcast and you were just talking about how, like, I guess you would come around to that. Like you didn't always feel like you wanted to market your own films and do all this stuff that you're doing now.
No, not at all.
You're doing it, right?
Like couple years. Yeah, I mean, like 6, 7 years ago when I first, when I did my first feature 6 or 7 years ago, I mean, it was like the dream. It was like, here's my movie on a silver platter, distributor and sales agent, come take my movie, like come make me lots of money. Like, I'm, look how great my movie is. Look how rich I'm going to be, when this distributor picks it up, and then obviously got screwed over like everybody else does on their first movie. And, so like there was, if you would have told me in 2014 that in 2020 I was going to be marketing and distributing my own feature, I would probably be scratching my head a little bit, because it was not anything I had anticipated or even wanted to do. And it wasn't till like, I think, you and me kind of like resonated about this on a similar note, was that it wasn't really till I dug into like the marketing and distribution of it that I saw how creative that aspect of the process actually is. And in some ways it can actually be more creatively satisfying than even some elements of production. And because with production you're always like hemming and hawing, stuck in a corner, like you're always not given the resources you need. It's really like in development and marketing, the top and the bottom, that you get like almost unlimited creative freedom to just kind of do whatever the hell you want.
It's true. You're not limited in the same way that you are during production. It's not as stressful, and really, business and in particular marketing, if done well, is obviously inherently creative. The strategies that you come up with, the more creative you are just in your art that you create, if you can find a way to channel that sort of creativity into marketing, into business, all of that. Not that everyone's going to want to do that or going to have to do that, but if you are willing to, as you have, then I think the rewards are pretty obvious. And hopefully more people kind of come around to that, because I do think that's where, just like generally where the industry is going. Obviously, we're always going to have the bigger studio films, and we're always going to have the big marketing machines. But I think a lot of the smaller, the movies that may have been in the $1 to $10 million range previously, or lower even, all the way down to just like bare bones micro budget films. A lot of those movies are going to take on either like hybrid distribution, some form of self-distribution in some cases. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think it's happening pretty quickly. So hopefully, hopefully people recognize it and sort of embrace it if they can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, we can talk about this maybe later, but I don't know that there's much money left in indie distribution and sales. Like especially right now during the pandemic, everyone's getting squeezed for every drop they can. I mean, at this point, it feels like as filmmakers, we need to hold on to that. That drop is valuable.
Yeah. And so are you able to speak to your strategy for distribution? And I do have a bunch of questions on back sort of on like process for production and post, and some stuff I want to ask you as well about the collaboration. But just while we're on this topic, can you talk about your I guess intention to do a whole theatrical run with it, essentially?
Yeah, so the theatrical run has been really fun with COVID. So we actually partnered. So it's really interesting. So we actually got offered a limited theatrical run through a booking agency who is operating through a film festival. And that all came about because the film festivals were, basically ultimately all canceled this year, And this executive director, she's a badass filmmaker, and she refused to let the film festival die, like without, doing something this year, like besides a virtual event. And she was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a few of my favorite movies, and I'm gonna put them on the road. I'm gonna get these in theaters. And so basically we had this deal that like through 5 to 30 theaters throughout the Midwest and Eastern Coast, and we were supposed to open July 1st, and then COVID happened, and we were intrinsically all tied to Tenet's release date because all the theaters are banking on Tenet opening. So everybody, all these theater chains across the United States are all like lining up their doors opening to 2 weeks before Tenet. But every time there's this weird thing. Every time Tenet gets delayed, the doors of the theater get delayed. And, so all of a sudden we're July 1st, and then we're July 10th, and then we were August for a question mark, but now it's looking like Tenet might be September, so I'm just assuming, the indoor theatrical's not happening at any time. So we, and that's okay, I understand. I don't know if I'd want to be in a theater in like a, in LA right now.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So has anything changed on the long term, just more general, I guess, idea that you had of releasing this really exclusively in person settings? I know that was sort of your initial intention, but is that shifting generally, or are you just kind of putting the brakes on it until things become a little bit more clear?
We actually have a deal with our financer. And this is actually at the suggestion of our financer, is that we're going to do a long-term exhibition window. And basically, we're going to hold off on a digital or physical release for probably at least the next 6 months. And we're going to just try and exhibit this in in-person events as much as we can, whether that be drive-ins, outdoor theaters, et cetera, et cetera. And we're
nice.
and we're directly connecting and establishing relationships with these drive-ins. We're connecting with cities and counties across the United States, trying to team up to do like for-profit cultural events, because these outdoor screenings seem like they are going to be a real, breadwinner, given the fact that, nobody really wants to be in, recycled air in a theater. At least.
But people do want to be going to see a movie,
yes.
Whether it's at a drive-in or, that's what, and I know their drive-ins already operating everywhere, I guess, now. And here in LA, I haven't been to any recently, but I've been really craving to get out there and do that, because it just brings me back to being a kid going to drive-in movies. Like, that was the most fun thing. It went away, and if there's one good thing that comes out of this whole situation, if drive-ins come back, and people like you or I or whoever can go and put a movie in them, then that's pretty awesome. So,
right.
So that initial stretch, you're saying, is kind of a 6-month window.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? And then past that point, do you have a rough idea of where you may navigate, or are you just going to reassess, kind of see how the theatrical run, or semi-theatrical, whatever you want to call it, goes, and then expand potentially from there?
Yeah. So, and basically, we're just trying to see like how far we can get away with it, because I feel like the pandemic's kind of this like this TBD question mark, and nobody really knows what it means for film production, for film exhibition, and so basically, what we can do as a small company and a small distribution company specifically is we can be incredibly flexible. We don't have to be stuck behind like these major obstacles of like $100 million marketing bills. If we're going to open in August, we don't have to commit and say, oh my God, we have to spend this $100 million to market the movie, or else like we can't release it. We can kind of, like play it by ear, and maybe even August 1st, we might be set up for an August 10th premiere or a theatrical somewhere, and August 1st we might be able to decide, we're not going to do it, or we're going to go, we're going to put full blast into this because we're not dealing with millions and millions of dollars and board members to approve, and and that's some of the great flexibility and opportunity that being independent allows you.
Yes, and I think it's really wise that you are not rushing into just getting it everywhere online right away. I think for this movie, for your intention, for what you wanted to do, I think you're, to me, it really is like a form of wisdom to know that you can sit on your movie for a few more months if that's going to mean a much better release, or you're going to reach more people, or you're going to be able to release it the way that you want to. And I think a lot of times people are just so eager to say that they finished the movie, that they'll rush through post-production, and they'll just, whatever festival takes them, they play it at, and then they just kind of like dump it. And sometimes that's what people want to do, and sometimes VOD, as you know, I just released my film on VOD, and for some films I do think that's the way to go. And I was hoping to do some more theatrical stuff as well, but in the midst of what's going on right now, it just didn't make sense in our case. But yeah. I do think that, just reading between the lines of what you're saying, there aren't a lot of filmmakers, younger filmmakers especially, who are willing to kind of play the long game and say, like, it's okay if this isn't on Apple TV for 2 years. Like, I don't really care, as long as people are seeing it, and maybe seeing it in a better environment, in a better context. So I love that you're doing that.
And it goes back to, something that I know you're a really strong believer in, which is the constant creation of passive assets. And, you know, and I think that as a filmmaker, I think it's really important to understand passive assets because of how our careers, how the actual like longevity of our careers work. You know, like they always say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You know, like it's about owning this content for 30 years, for 40 years. You know, and the kinds of money that you can generate against a film when you own it for 30 years. And so, I mean, I guess that's part of the patience that I think people really do need to understand and be able to like digest themselves is like that instant gratification is nice, but if you actually want to make like a career with some longevity behind it, you know, you need to be able to set these up and be able to be patient with them and be able to look at them. And you know what, like if Parallax isn't on Netflix, you know, for 3 years, I mean, that's okay. You know, that's all right.
Yep, it doesn't matter because it's an asset that hopefully will generate dividends for you for 10, 20, 30 years. And I think when you realize that that's the case, especially before you make a movie, it helps you choose the right project too. Because when you go in thinking, okay, I'm going to make a movie, we'll shoot it in a few days, we'll release it in a few months, I'm going to forget it, then that's what it becomes. But when you say, you know, I'm going to treat this like it's a bigger movie that's going to be around for many years, maybe many decades, people are going to still keep coming back and watching it. It puts you in a different headspace. You might come up with a different concept, execute it differently, release it differently, and ultimately potentially reach more people and make a better movie. So I think that, again, it's really wise that you've kind of taken that path when it's so easy not to. I want to ask you guys just like some general lessons and takeaways from the process, because obviously, as you know, so many filmmakers are listening to this and want to learn from people like yourselves. And I'll throw this one, I guess, maybe to Brooke first, because
let her talk.
I'd love to have you chime in.
I'm done talking. No, I'm done talking here.
No. We'll come back. Well, I still got a couple for you. But yeah, I guess, you know, from your vantage point, were there any sort of key takeaways as a producer on this film when you look back? Obviously, the end result speaks for itself. It's a beautifully made film, etc. But just from a sort of boots on the ground producing level, you know, were you guys to start another feature, let's say tomorrow, is there anything concrete that you'd say you would do differently that maybe you learned from this process, or things that really did work that you might want to make sure that you kind of reintegrate into the next film?
Well, I just want to say I think having a really great crew means a lot, and it really helps bring the film together in a way that you couldn't do by yourself, obviously. I don't know if I'd do anything different particularly. We spent quite some time going through it and like really like working the logistics of how each shot is going to be, and I don't know. I don't think I would do anything different personally. I think we
have a very meticulous, like we just all, I just feel like intrinsically and naturally we all work very methodically, and you know we, you know, the way, you know, Brooke was the production designer and producer, you know, so she was really involved with the visual, you know, breakdowns, you know, with Connor and I, and you know, Connor being our cinematographer for anyone listening who doesn't know. And, you know, so we were all so heavily involved with like, well, what happens when we see this corner of the room? Well, what happens when we see this corner of the room? You know, all of a sudden, you know, crazy ass Michael wants to do a 360 shot, you know, like where are we putting lights? How do we set this up? You know, we have all this, you know, and then you're dealing with even like logistics of like, this is a house and we have literally all this shit everywhere. Like, you know, and now we have to do this 360 shot. Where's all this shit go? You know, like, you know, and it's just even things like that. It's just like, so we were, you know, I'm not trying to speak for her, but we definitely were, like she said, breaking things down heavily and constantly beforehand.
a little OCD, but
No,
it's
that's
okay.
good. Well, that's good, because sometimes it's just a matter of like reinforcing that the system that you've created after iterating, I'm sure, on other projects and your other feature and all that, that, okay, this system does work, and let's put it into action maybe on another film and try to take all the strengths and you know, put them to use. What about like post-production? How collaborative were you guys during the edit? So and maybe Brooke, can you speak to that? Were you seeing it at every stage, or were you just kind of able to step back a little bit and see it more sporadically, so you had a different vantage point on the edit?
We were very hands-on with the edit. Michael and I would actually take time separately working with the editor and giving him our own personal notes and kind of collaborating with like individually and just seeing how our ideas kind of meshed well together. But I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
No. I was just curious as to, because I know with some, like for me, for example, when I was editing my feature, my wife would sit with me and give notes and give me ideas, and it was really helpful. But it was especially helpful because it wasn't every single cut. I might sit there for a few cuts, and then once I got lost, then there was like a fresh set of eyes. So I was kind of wondering, I was trying to picture your process. If it was like all you guys just in a room together all the time making the cut happen, or if it's like, if it's getting passed around, or how that kind of played out.
I make jokes that the way, like, Yusuf and I, who was the other producer, Yusuf was the third producer and the editor, and the other producer, sorry. And so basically with Yusuf, I always make jokes that we have this process of like, making little ones out of big ones. Like we start with this big rough, piece of crap, and we just chip away, and me and Yusuf are the kind of people where we chip away with everything. We'll play with the narrative one day, we'll play with the pacing one day, we'll play with sound effects and temp music another day, and then we'll play with transitions, from one scene to the next scene, another day. And we might actually just spend, we might end up spending 8 hours of an edit literally just playing with all the different various transitions and trying to smooth them out, trying to see where they work better. Maybe we'll move this scene here to there. So it's like we do this mass assembly, and then we just pick away pieces of it and pull away layers of it, piece by piece, until it becomes, what it was. And, the original rough cut for Parallax was like 2 hours and 45 minutes. We had temp music and sound effects, and, and like I said, like an onion, we're just pulling away layers, week after week after week, and all of a sudden, 4 months later, we've pulled away enough layers here, there, and we've shaped and crafted, this final result.
That's great. And it's amazing that you were able to start with that much source footage and had that long of a assembly cut, as I'm sure, it wasn't
did not need to be
easy for you to chop off the 50 minutes or what, because what is it now, an hour and 50, the final run time? Something like, so it's easy to, it's a lot, I don't want to say easier, because it's never easy to kill your darlings or cut things that you've shot, but it's a better problem than having to go and like reshoot stuff because you don't have enough material or something like that. So the fact that on a micro budget you were able to get that much content, and by the way, are you able to share the budget? It's fine if not.
No,
but I don't know if you guys
hell no.
Okay,
no way.
Okay,
no, it's right. low budget, lots of low budget. It was under right. It was under 100,000.
Yeah,
that's all.
But in any case, I mean, even for $250,000 movies, $500,000 movies, to have enough footage and material to even have an assembly that's like close to 3 hours is kind of unheard of. And when I watch the film, the coverage is great. The inserts are amazing. There's a lot of texture built, and the camera moves. And I'll talk about this separately, in the other podcast. But just some of the blocking and the camera movement and everything was awesome. And it's so rare to see that level of detail on a film on this scale and scope. I seriously applaud you guys for it, and I have a million other questions, but I know we have another podcast to get to. So
I know we can roll through a few more of these.
Yeah. So okay, I'll give you a couple more, and then I'll have you guys share where everyone can go find the movie. But yeah. So we talked a little bit about post-production, like editing. What about finishing? How on the budget that you have are you able to get things like music, sound design, color correction, visual effects, all of that stuff done? Is that calling in favors? Is that, just allocating a lot of the budget to post? Because to me, the finished product looks really polished. So curious to know how you navigate that last kind of leg of post-production.
You want to take that one?
You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm going to take this one. All right. No, so as far as, a lot of favors, obviously, but a lot of a lot of relationships that we've built throughout the years, for example, like my sound designer and sound mixer, it's the first feature he's ever done for me, but, we've done shorts before, and he was phenomenal, and I had actually gotten Mark, my mixer and sound designer. I'd actually gotten him on a short film that I did a couple years ago, and he was just getting back into the narrative field after years in commercial work, and really was just trying to just play around, like, and he was just like really trying to dabble as like an artist again and get some like, like me, like get some artistic reward. And and I think that there's really something to be said about being somebody who knows exactly what you want, because you tend to draw people like to you, and you tend to draw people that are quality workers to you when you have passion, what you want. And so like I it's like I can't take much credit because most of what was done by more talented individuals than myself, who just support the vision, But as far as finishing goes, it's these relationships we've leveraged, and then just obviously calling in as many favors as you can get, here, there, in between, filling in the cracks and paying for what you can.
Yeah, the team, it always comes down to that team and just having the right people on board. And it's funny because I've had that same feeling that you just described myself, where I almost, like, if someone likes something I've made, or I get nice feedback on, the film I just released, then, I know how hard everyone else worked too. And I know, like, that, a lot of the decisions, like, were theirs, or the actors, like, they held the whole thing on their back. So you almost sometimes feel guilty because you're like, everyone else did so much work. Like I'm like literally sitting back. I'm like, what did I even do?
Right. I mean,
and I know, like, I held
frame.
it together, and yeah, exactly. So you did something, but yeah, it's a weird art form because it's not like other, it's not like playing a guitar or like painting something, like in the movie. Like, it's not so singular, it's collaborative, and it doesn't like start and end with one person. So I think the movie is only as strong as the team. And to me, that's like a big sort of takeaway just from this discussion is how collaborative all of you were, and being on the same page creatively. Like, that is just so critical. And the worst thing I think that a filmmaker can do, especially early on, is just kind of assume that they're the guy at the megaphone or woman at the megaphone who's going to bark at everybody and tell them what to do, as opposed to just bring people on board who are going to like lift them up, as opposed to them just being like a dictator on set.
Yeah,
or something.
I mean, and there's something to really be said about, like, don't speak loud unless you're gonna do it. Like don't be irritated that your actors can't reach a certain point, or that your DP can't make it look a certain way, or your production designer can't, move the pieces of furniture to space things out enough. You know what? Like, if you know what you want, you better be able to do it yourself, or else there's no excuse, and that's how, like, a lot of the players on my team operate. We all kind of operate under that methodology of, like, it's like, don't complain, just do, everybody, there is no egos. There's no reason to have an ego, like, and we're all here to accomplish the same thing, to make a piece of art that we're all proud of. None of us are trying to make, with no disrespect, none of us are trying to do TV movies or soap operas, or, like, that's not why we're here, with no disrespect, and so, obviously the goal for the product is to make something that excels beyond that. And that needs to be, like, absolutely, that needs to be instilled, I think, in the company motto, and I say company loosely as, like, the team, but the company motto needs to be, it needs to be team-based.
Yeah, and I think surrounding yourself with a team, filmmakers are so competitive, especially early on in film school. Everybody's, my film's better than yours, and, I'm going to beat you to this. I'm going to get this into this festival. And at the end of the day, like, the filmmakers that really thrive, whether they're from film school or not, are the ones that, like, find their group, find their little crew, and make a production company or a film collective, or just have, a friendly relationship where they can, exchange favors on set, whatever it may be, and work as a team. And again, I think that's something that clearly you both have done very well on this film, and is rare on this level, and especially with younger filmmakers who are, on their first, second, third features. You don't see that so often. So that's very cool.
Yeah. So the piece of advice is, everybody get over yourself. We're just trying to make cool art here, guys. Everybody needs to get over themselves.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about this situation we're in, if there's such a thing, is that it does kind of put into context just like how trivial everything else is. Like, you know, we're just making a movie at the end of the day. Like, I think you can, you know, under the wrong circumstance, you can kind of like get in your own head and convince yourself that it's something else. But no matter what the budget, no matter what it is, like, it's still a movie. Like, it's a fun thing. It is artistic, and, you know, it's a way that you can express yourself. But I think, like you said, if you kind of get over your own ego and you make it more about like, let's just make a great thing and like not take ourselves too seriously, and but still like take the process seriously and like give it a lot of respect.
We're not pulling children out of fires. You know,
exactly.
Like, you know, at the end of the day, like it's a fallible art form, and you know, it's like, but that's the fun of it. That's the risk, and that's the risk and the reward of it. You know.
Yeah, I'm super impressed, and I guess any last sort of words of wisdom before we wind this one down for audience members, just takeaways from the film, inspiration, maybe in the context of like what filmmakers should be doing right now while they're at home and they don't really know where maybe their next paycheck is coming from or their next movie is going to be able to be made. You know, any advice that you might want to share?
I mean, I definitely think that film's never going away. The industry might change. The industry, of course, is going to change. And, you know, and even if things do get crazy here, you know, because of the pandemic, because of the economy, whatever, you know, that's not going to change things with movies. I think the way we shoot movies, you know, we might not be doing 100-person crews anymore. You know, it might be like 20, 15-person crews, like more commonly, you know. But I think that there is, you know, I think one of the most important things is, A, nobody's ever going to care about your vision as much as you do. So the moment you can get over that and really put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and the audience member, the better, you know, the sooner you'll be able to make a better product and actually be able to execute your vision more along the lines of how you intended to do it, even if it's not exactly what you thought you were going to do. And honestly, just the ego thing, because the ego thing really allows you, you know, being able to step over yourself, being able to be the director who moves chairs, who, you know, you see your grips, you know, sweating their asses off, you know, you know, as a director, you grab some sandbags and some apple boxes and you start hauling ass too, because this is your movie, because it's more important to you than it is the grips who are, you know, either working for way less than they should probably be paid or straight up just doing you a favor. And you know, no one's going to care as much as you. So you be that director who's going to lead by example, and that is how you create a team that supports you endlessly. You know, that is how you create a team who's basically, you know, it's a little metaphorical and figurative, but you know, that's how you create the team who's going to die for you. You know, and the team who's going to run through fire with you. And you know, I intend to make my next movie with like literally the same exact team. Like, to me, there's literally no reason to substitute anyone else. Why would I?
Yeah, I agreed. And I think there's a shorthand that you develop with your team, and they get what you want to do. You get how they work, and to have to start over from scratch on every film, I think is a huge hurdle that is totally avoidable if you just start with the right team. And you know, as you expand, you add people to that team. But I think your core is obviously really strong. And any other sort of words of wisdom from you, Brooke, or anything else that you want to share?
I 100% agree with the team. Your crew is everything. Like, literally, they are everything for the film. And don't stop creating. There's no excuse. People make movies on their iPhones. Like, there's no reason why you can't get out and do even like a 5-minute short of whatever.
Yeah, it's so true. Just doing anything is just, it doesn't even matter what it is. Just being active, like, you meet so many people and you learn so many things. And even, you know, I've made films that I hated. I never released them. I never even finished a couple of them. But like, I still met amazing people on those films that I ended up working with a couple of years later. So I totally agree. Just to echo that, it's like, just work, you know, just get busy. And right now, I think, obviously, it doesn't cost anything to write a script or come up with an idea or reach out to, you know, collaborators. Like, all those things can be done right now.
There's no precedent right now. I mean, that's the other
Yeah.
thing. Like, you know, like I think somebody just made like a, you know, just shot like a studio backed movie like over Zoom or something from what I heard, you know, like, so, you know, like there's no precedent for how movies are to be made right now. So go break precedent, go make movies. I mean, that's kind of like, you know, where our mentality is, you know, it's not like, you know, there's like this grand formula. I mean, that's just our mentality behind our exhibition strategy is like, there's no precedent. Like, why not? Why not get out there? What do you have to lose by trying to make a movie right now? I mean, because chances are there's not many other people making movies right now. Like, you know, if you're in, you know, rural Montana, rural Wisconsin, rural Illinois, you know, you're not in LA County where it's like, you know, a COVID cesspool, you know, like, go make a movie, you know, you have nothing to lose, but.
Yeah. Yeah, there's never a good time either. I think people always think, there will be that moment when the right person comes in and they cut me a check, or, you know, my life will just, you know, be more conducive to taking time off and making a movie, but that's just never going to happen. So like, if it doesn't feel like the right time now, that's okay. If you really want to make a movie, I think you just make it, and not to oversimplify. Some people are in a situation where they legitimately can't, and that's okay. But I think for most of us, we tend to sort of make excuses because a lot of us, you know, are afraid to try because that may mean it doesn't work or it fails. But, you know, it's only a failure if you allow that to be your narrative. If you don't learn from it, you don't, you know, do it better next time. So,
well, you're never ready.
Yeah. No, never. And, you know, we're going to have to do like a part 15 of this at some point. Cause
I know.
I always love having these discussions. And I know this one's not super long, but I do want to
get too
to
meta,
your next one.
You know, we get too meta and big, you know, we start talking about the business, the industry, concepts of the industry, you know.
No, I love it. I could talk about this stuff literally all day. But let everyone know where they can find the movie and follow the movie and follow you guys so they can kind of keep up to date with any updates that you have coming out.
Definitely. So as far as trying to find like theatrical dates, drive-in dates, et cetera, I think probably the easiest way to do that is going to be on our website, which is parallaxmovie.us, as in United States. Again, that's parallaxmovie.us. You can also check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/parallax2020, and on Instagram, /parallaxmovie.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for doing this. And like I said, I want to keep having you guys back on. And just as the process keeps unfolding, it's totally unique and unlike any other filmmaker I think I've had on the show, on my podcast at least. So
thanks, Noam.
So yeah, let's do this again sometime.